is not exclusive to textbooks. It includes a lot of other different types of materials as well. And so it includes textbooks, but it also might be supplementary materials that you would then use for class, podcasts, videos, lesson plans, other learning devices that you might be using within the course, or as noted here, it could be the entire course itself is shared under this licensing. So it really covers a wide array of material. Now, as to where you can locate OERs, there are a lot of different places out there, and I think this is one of the most common complaints or challenges that come up for faculty, which is where do I go to get this material? The top one, the Open Textbook Library, this is an offshoot of the Open Education Center run by the University of Minnesota. This is something that Scott also might be referencing some with Mobius's joining the Open Textbook Network, which also comes out of the University of Minnesota. OpenStax is another nice repository for OER materials, including textbooks. This one's run by Rice University. And then there are a few other ones as well here. If you are interested in any of these materials, these are all links, and we can provide this to you after the session as well, if you want to spend some more time exploring these options. And in terms of impact, there's been a number of studies done that show what happens when campuses move towards the adoption of OER in their courses. There was a large study in 2015. It was published in the Journal of Computing in Higher Education. Elaine Fisher was one of the primary authors of that study, and this was a large-scale study. It was run across, I believe, 15 different institutions, involved 10 different courses, and involved more than 16,000 students at these courses, involved in these courses. About 5,000 were enrolled in courses using OER, with the other 11,000 serving as the control population. And students in the courses using OER, one of the primary findings was they enrolled in a significantly higher number of credits the next semester. So it did suggest that some of the savings that they gained from not spending on textbooks was immediately put back into their education to enroll in more courses at the institution. This also perhaps then speaks to issues that we've been involved in here at Park relating to retention and completion and the speed that they're able to do so. And the more courses that we have students enrolled in, the quicker they're completing their degrees. I think that's a plus. Students whose faculty chose OER also generally performed as well or better than students whose faculty assigned commercial textbooks. And 3 key measures that they found: actually completing the course to start, completing the course with a final grade of C- or higher, and then their overall course grade as well. Now that was student performance. In terms of reception of these tests, or these texts, in a 2013 study, they looked at both faculty reception and student reception of these materials. In both populations, they found by a vast majority that they rated these texts as being at least equivalent quality or better quality than their other materials. One of the texts that one of the quotes that I pulled from students was that I enjoy having online texts provided for me because I'm poor. I spend the money I have left after rent on school, so having free online text provided for me benefits me very much. That being said, there were, of course, some issues that students reported as well, and they are the ones that I think that you would probably expect, that occasionally they weren't able to access their online text, or that they missed having a print copy to read. But generally speaking, the student reception and the faculty reception of these materials was really good. Now, in terms of campus OER support, this can look at several different ways. And so I tried to pull different things out. Again, we referenced OpenStax and the Open Textbook Library run by the University of Minnesota. Like I said, that came out of the larger Center for Open Education that's run out of the University of Minnesota. Another option is the model that they use at the University of South Florida, which is the Textbook Affordability Project. This offers resources for both faculty and for students in terms of how they can reduce textbook costs, discussing OER and how you can go about adopting them, but then also recommending other partners that they've worked with on campus to reduce textbook costs. The OER page at the University of Hawaii is another really nice one as well. What they're doing there is grant funding for internal OER projects with a set timeline as to when these projects are going to be completed. And so that means that they're funding things like actual OER textbook development at their institution and some of those other supplementary materials that I talked about as well. So other teaching materials that their faculty can use, and they're rewarding faculty innovation that way. So then this comes to part of the idea of what this could look like at Park. And if we are interested in this as a faculty for our students, what do we want it to look like? There are a lot of different options out there. One of the things that I found was that they've done to encourage OER adoption, for example, at the University of Wisconsin, is they've actually acquired and licensed software for all of their faculty to use that helps in creating print books and electronic books. So the actual putting together your own textbook that would then allow them to use, and from what I can tell, it's fairly user-friendly software as well. So the university has gone ahead and licensed that software to aid their faculty and staff in the creation of their own OER materials if they want to. Maybe this is the university ordering print copies of open source text for students to purchase. This is something where, again, we can there's been discussions about the university working with publishers to buy e-text at a reduced cost, but if we wanted to move towards OER adoption, those texts don't cost anything if we get them electronically. However, for students who want them in print, we certainly have the options of working with several major printers who will run off OpenStax textbooks, for example. They'll do the binding. And I think I saw the cost, for example, of, I want to say it was the chemistry textbook. If you go ahead and do a bulk order printing of that, it's $52 a textbook. So you can get the print textbook. I think would probably be significantly cheaper than a lot of other textbooks. It does not mean just exclusively e-text as well. Yeah.
The introductory textbook for chemistry at UMKC, if it's bought in the print edition, is $323.
Yeah, that's about average.
Okay, and we do have auto access options on some courses where the students automatically receive the book in their course management system when they register and are billed for it. But using that brings the cost down to about $185.
Yeah, the e-text on my organic text, I think, is $180.
Right, and the OpenStax has an intro chemistry book, both a general chemistry book and a chemistry book more geared for basic learners called Atoms First, and those are free to use, and working with your bookstore, you may be able to do print options for under $50.
Yeah, I'm using it now. No complaints so far.
Okay, so that's just an example.
And then the last point that I wanted to make is a potential thing that we could do if this is something that faculty are interested in would be incentives for creating or adopting OER materials in courses. And again, this takes a wide variance of forms at different institutions. For example, another common complaint or challenge that faculty have when adopting OER is trying to figure out what is of good quality, because we don't have the quality controls that we are used to with traditional publishers. And so, for example, one of the things that they're doing at Vanderbilt, I realize this is probably not enough to change anybody's life, but they offer $200 as an incentive to faculty to go out and review an OER textbook. And so if they complete a review at someplace like OpenStax or the University of Minnesota Open Text Library, if they complete that review and submit it to their academic affairs office, they're eligible for an additional $200. And so that then not only creates a nice little extra for the faculty reviewing it, but we then are eliminating some of those other, perhaps deterrents to adopting those texts, and that we have faculty at a wide variety of institutions that are offering their views on the text, and it gives you an idea as to the quality and if you'd want to adopt it. Yes.
Figures from the Open Textbook Network suggest that faculty who review the books that are in the Open Textbook Library tend to adopt those books in their courses. It's not 100%, but it's more than 50% of faculty who review the textbooks in Open Textbook Library end up adopting them for their coursework.
And I don't want you to think either that these are all like uniformly positive reviews as well. If you if you go into the open textbook library, for example, you will see a number of very well-regarded texts reviewed by people at, not to cast aspersions on any of our colleagues at other institutions, but at other institutions with which you'd probably have familiarity with the name of the institution when you've gone there, that are reviewed very well. And you will have texts that are not looked upon as favorably. So I think you are getting, you know, fairly honest reviews from other academics who are out there who are spending time, you know, reviewing these materials and then sharing this with your colleagues and contributing to the conversation. In terms of creating and adopting, this is another thing that is being pursued at other institutions. I think I saw it was at, I want to say it was VCU, where they're offering cash incentives to faculty to not only revise a course and adopt OER, but then write their own OER, eligible, I think, up to $6,000 for writing a text for a full course. And I think the quote from one of the members of their administration there captured it really well, and that they said, you know, I can't determine what a good biochemistry textbook is, and I'm not trying to tell faculty what an appropriate text is. All we want to do is to increase people's awareness of these options, help them find materials that they might want to use, and if we can find quality materials and save our students money, that's going to be a good thing. So I liked that way of encapsulating that. But with that in mind, this is what it could look like at Park. Again, maybe turn off again. I'm missing my grand segue transition to Scott, who's going to talk about then what OER adoption looks like at within the U of M system. There we go.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much to John for inviting me here today. I really appreciate being able to come and talk with you about this. And let me point out, my title is Open Education Resources Coordinator. So it's, what I'm doing is very much what Katelyn was talking about. I'm helping people learn about resources. Open education resources are a tool. They're not the tool. So we do know for a fact that the cost of course materials for students has been rising at an astronomical rate. And I don't use the word astronomical lightly, but if you look at the Consumer Price Index since 1998, the cost of college textbooks has risen 181% in that period of time. And that's taken from a blog by a blog post in the American Enterprise Institute. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at. I've been to presentations where people compared textbook inflation cost with healthcare cost inflation. Textbook inflation is higher than healthcare inflation costs. And you know how disappointed, and I use that word euphemistically, you know how disappointed people are with healthcare. They're just not aware of the college textbook issue. And when their son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter goes to college and they get this big sticker shock in the first term when they're buying their books, because, you know, freshman year, go into the store, you pick up all the new books, boom, there you go. You don't know about the rental options. You don't know about the used options, things like that. It's a major turnoff for students. So our effort at UMKC began a couple of years ago, very much in the spirit of, let's try to inform people about what's been going on in the last 5 years or so in OER. Because if you looked at an open textbook in, say, 2011, you might have looked at it and said, this is not very good stuff, and dropped it and never looked at OERs again. That's not the case anymore. A lot of these are being reviewed. The OpenStacks, in fact, have an editorial board. They basically, a lot of the work on open education is being done with money from places like the Gates Foundation, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. There's a lot of money going into these things. And they basically hired away the editorial boards from publishing companies. And they said, we need better textbooks. And that's how OpenStax is funded. That's where some of the funding for Open Textbook Network come from. So a lot of these are peer reviewed. A lot of these have authors who you will recognize. They're better quality and they're getting better quality all the time. And the point about open education is if you find a textbook and there's some chapter in it that's not perfect, that you don't think works for you, it has a Creative Commons license. You can take that chapter out. You can put in your chapter on that. You can then re-release it to the community. Everybody grows in the process. This is what open education is. It's not simply taking, it's not simply using a published textbook anymore, okay? So open education is kind of like a whole way of thinking about doing your pedagogy. This is my library's research guide on open education resources. Steal it. The reason you might want to steal it is we've got sections on what are OER and why should I care. We have some great videos on the textbook versus open textbooks. We have guides on finding textbooks, courseware, finding other kinds of OERs, which we talked about, which are like videos, instructional units, lab assignments, simulation software. There's an amazing amount of open tools that are available for you to incorporate in your class, okay? There's also a link to tools for evaluating OER, where other universities have put together rubrics and things like that, because that's one of the big issues. I've never used an OER. How do I evaluate it? Here's how some other faculty have done it at other institutions, okay? We have a section on Creative Commons and copyright. And notice we have the UMKC bookstore on our page. The bookstore is not in an adversarial relationship with the library at UMKC in dealing with reducing costs of textbooks for students. We work together on these things. They have the auto access program, which they've been working on for 5-6 years, and they can point to measurable amounts of money that they've saved students. And they're interested in open because they realize I can do print on demand for students if they want to have a print textbook and not use the online version. They can also work some other deals. They also are responsible for keeping track of the federally mandated Affordable Textbook Act data that tracks what textbooks are in use at the institution. So they're a good source for metrics. Okay, so yes, use this. You can adapt this guide for your own institution. You can access it. Please access it. My statistics go way up in it. I bask in the glory of that. But just use this, and there's a lot of good resources on there. And that kind of marks the first phase of what we were doing at UM and UMKC. But building awareness, it's more than just, you know, building a baseball diamond and the ghosts come out of the field and we all play baseball together. We need to do more than this. So we've had a change in the leadership of the UM system. Mun Choi is our president now, and he came from University of Connecticut. And at the University of Connecticut system, he was a part of a big open textbook initiative there. And so at a press conference on June 21st this year at Mizzou, he said that there was going to be a system-wide initiative to adopt more affordable book options, textbook options, utilizing OER. And he said, high quality, affordable education is central to our mission as the state's public higher education institution. And then went on to talk about open sourcing things. He also went on to say really silly things, like we would have our entire freshman curriculum on open source by next fall. So, I mean, but that's the kind of, and I say that because we all know it was silly, but I say that because it's important to realize that it's not only students who have this vision that will be able to provide more affordable materials, it's also upper administration. And so after hearing that and watching the I was at the press conference and watching the other upper administrators up there, you know, pick their jaws up off the ground. Then we decided we were going to have a system level, open and affordable textbook initiative task force. Okay, and we had I was included in that, and there's a task force meeting. Our first meeting was August 3rd, and the key part, this is where I'm going to talk about what we're doing in terms of how the mechanics might work at a place like Park or another school. We had membership from all 4 of the system campuses, which is our UMSL, St. Louis, Missouri Science and Technology, formerly known as RALA, Mizzou, and UMKC, and System Academic Affairs Office. And the composition of this committee was faculty, top administrators. We have students on the committee from student government. We have librarians who've been pretty active in open movements and are aware of some of the issues and the Creative Commons licensing and things like that. We have our online and instructional technology people, and we have the bookstore. All of those people are working together on this committee. And as far as the system level, our UMKC representatives are myself and also one of our instructional designers. Okay, and we have nearly finalized goals and missions for what we're doing. Very broad and basic things: providing more affordable and open educational resources, engaging in a conversation with faculty and helping them to get the resources they need to be able to convert existing courses and develop new courses, to use more open and affordable resources. And a crucial point, increasing sustainable support and resources and tools for faculty. That starts to get into things like grants, you know, having a grant program in place. Developing a sustainable system-wide strategy. And sustainable was in there a couple of times for a reason. We want to make sure that we're making a culture shift and not just a one-off type program. So we want to be able to use and leverage system resources to increase the awareness of affordable and open resource alternatives, incentivize transitions to using those resources, and encourage people to create their own materials and make them open resources as well, and to engage in the open education movement. And identify collaborative partnerships at each campus for sustainability. Again. So that's our basic charge. And we had several subcommittees, and this gives you an idea of what we thought were the important things we needed to do right away to be able to measure and to do something with this idea. So we wanted to get our metrics in order right away. So we're developing a metrics plan. We're creating the resources and business processes and workflows necessary to utilize OERs that exist, adopting and adapting ones that exist, or create new. We're building awareness through promotion of the program and doing trainings. We're designing and implementing a grant program. I'm not sure how many years that grant program is targeted for initially, but the idea is to create grants, particularly for high impact courses. High impact should be defined by your institution in terms of what courses are more students taking, and combination what courses have those really high course materials costs already. The combination of those two things gives you an idea of how much of a dollar impact you can have upon the student population. Execute and identify recognition opportunities, don't execute and identify the people involved in them, and distribute created resources. This is actually, for us right now, it's kind of a lower level priority because we want to focus initially on adopting existing resources that will work or adapting existing resources that will work. We're going to incentivize people to create resources where there aren't acceptable OER alternatives at the current time that you can adopt or adapt. Okay, and that's going to involve using our institutional repository at some level. And that is all. And I'm available to answer any questions. And if anybody wants to contact me, you can do so through that webpage. Yes.
university owns the bookstores.
The university system owns the bookstores at all the campuses. Right. Yes, that is correct. And that makes a difference because if you're...
Because we're contracted.
Right. If you're contracted with like Barnes & Noble or one of the others that do that, it's a different relationship entirely. And I understand that. But I just wanted to point out that because of our particular relationship there, it was essential to involve the bookstore in this so that they understood. And they really... In some ways, they said, we want to put ourselves out of business in that particular area so that we can provide more technology solutions and things like that. They don't see it as being something that is threatening to their way of life. Barnes & Noble, they might see it differently. Yes. And I also have business cards, so if anybody wants the snail mail kind of business card, I've got that as well. Thank you.
And John, I'm sorry, y'all. This is Stacy. If you're online, if you want to see what's happening in the room, you can just look at my video, I guess, under my name. I'm showing what's in the room. So.
I thought I was incognito.
Not anymore. My apologies. Go ahead, John.
Oh, no problem. Well, I wanted to share a little bit this afternoon about library resources that may be helpful to many of you in terms of supplementing or even replacing course texts. I feel like I'm always in someone's way in this particular room. So these are just to highlight a few particular databases that might be of help to some of you, just to underscore a few collections under ebooks, articles, and videos. For example, we do have the EBSCO ebook collections. Humanities ebook collections. Pirate Search is a wonderful resource for pulling together searches of article databases across a variety of different article databases from one search box. Of course, several of the JSTOR collections are available as well. Two collections which you may not be available or may not be aware of would be the Films on Demand and a newer resource that's been rebranded recently called Who Knew It, formerly called Atomic Learning. Films on Demand in particular contains a number, 20,000 plus documentary and educational videos within that collection across a wide variety of subject areas. Who Knew It, formerly Atomic Learning, contains a number of tutorial videos, primarily focused in information technology. So if you're looking for a video related to how to do a particular task in Excel, or even in Canvas, for example, and Who Knew It would be a great resource to check out related to that. Should skip over there. Now, the big difference between the library resources and open educational resources that we've been talking about up till now is that almost all of the library's resources are copyrighted, meaning there are going to be some additional rules that apply, certainly compared to something in the public domain or something under a Creative Commons license that Katelyn alluded to earlier. So with copyrighted works, as you know, citation attribution is absolutely essential. Copyrighted works also don't lend themselves to being remixed or adapted freely in the way that a Creative Commons license may allow someone to do. So you can't just take obviously chunks of text here and there and then pass it off as your own. We get after our students for doing that. We call that plagiarism, right? So, so we shouldn't be doing the same thing with copyright works. The main thing that I would emphasize with library resources to use these in your own courses is that you're always better off linking to those resources rather than downloading them and re-uploading them into another website or into Canvas. The moment you start doing that, uploading that content somewhere else, you're running afoul of copyright and fair use. Linking to a resource, however, you're largely playing above ground and not going to run afoul of copyright or fair use limitations.
Also, when you link resources, you can count that at the library, right, and you get statistics on what's being used. It would be really bad if you downloaded and uploaded something and then it disappeared from the library collection because the library thought it wasn't being used when it was being used heavily. So.
So a significant difference there between the library works and open educational resources that copyright, and do take care, please, to link instead. I have a slide here that talks a little bit more about permalinking, and we don't have time today to get into all the nuances of finding the permalinks in different databases. But what I would emphasize is that all of the librarians are here to assist you with that process of finding those permalinks. Some databases make that a little bit easier than others. And there's a critical step in building a permalink that facilitates our off-campus users, our distance students, to be able to access those resources. And we are more than happy to help you with that process. So ebook search tips. There are a couple of ways that you can look for ebooks in pirate search that involve adding particular criteria to your search query, whether it's textbook or study and teaching, to fine-tune your results. But I would like to put in a plug here for a particular research guide that we've just set up here. This address, libguides.park.edu/ZTC for zero textbook cost. We have what I'm branding as a beta e-textbook finder tool that you can use there. You could type in any subject, any topic, and it will automatically apply some of these limiters that I have listed at the top of the slide to narrow down the scope of the search results. So you should be seeing only those ebooks that come close to approximating other types of textbooks, just to save you a few steps in trying to build that search query. So again, that search tool, not available on the library homepage or other pages, but on this particular link of libguides.park.edu/ZTC. And we will also be, I have already posted links to all of the open educational resource links that Katelyn mentioned earlier in our session today. So other helpful links will be there, including our slides, with Scott's permission, if
Yes.
that's okay.
Steal my
We'll
slides.
include that on there as well after today's session. Films on demand, I'll mention too that there are specific ways that you can link or embed videos within your Canvas courses from Films on Demand. We've got those instructions at this particular link here, another research guide. I've got this cross-link from the ZTC LibGuide as well. So again, those instructions are available. Librarians are here to help you with that particular step in the process if you'd like to incorporate those videos. And there's videos from a number of very reputable publishers. This is not, Joe Schmo's YouTube channel. We've got PBS videos in there, BBC History Channel, Films for the Humanities, a number of very reputable publishers represented in the Films on Demand collection. Finally, I just want to wrap up in mentioning that several PARC courses already are using course texts that have content duplicated in library collections, the EBSCO ebook collections in particular. And with the help of online operations, I was able to take a list of all of the ISBN numbers for textbooks being used in Fall 2 coming up and match that up against what's available in the EBSCO collections. And these are the courses that have some or even all of their texts already represented in the EBSCO ebook collections. Unlimited users, everybody in the class could access those ebooks simultaneously and not pay a dime for those texts. And when I ran the savings, the potential savings, it's over $42,000 in potential savings. If those sections are fully enrolled and students access those EBSCO ebooks instead of purchasing new copies of textbooks, they'd save some considerable money there. 3 of the courses highlighted in red there actually had all of their texts available with the EBSCO ebook collections. So I wanted to open it up at this point for questions and discussion. I, again, greatly appreciate everyone's interest in this topic today. And given the number of folks here, that obviously there's considerable interest. I imagine a lot of questions about where do we go from here, concerns that you may have about open educational resources. And we'd be happy to answer those individually after today's session. I know that there's another presentation starting at 3 o'clock as well today, another area of campus. But does anyone have any questions to start us off here, or comments?
I have one, actually. So I did the thing where you find a textbook in a database or whatever. I used Eric, and there's an older edition of a textbook, and I created the link to it, which is great. And my students are enjoying not paying for that book, and I live in fear that it will disappear out of that database. So I don't know, like, can you tell me like how stable some of those resources are? Because I think it would be terrible to lose access in the middle of the semester.
Sure. For the EBSCO ebook collection, they do, there's a subscription component that the library receives that we pay for, and they do add and remove titles during the year, typically in July and sometimes in January. So it is not happening in the middle of an academic term, typically, except possibly a summer term. But fall or spring is usually safe. In many cases, I would say the books that are being pulled out of that subscription collection due to whatever licensing changes are happening, in many cases, we're able to purchase a copy. Again, it depends on the licensing terms, what's available, but it is possible that we may be able to purchase that and secure a permanent copy in electronic format. I've been trying to monitor that. So, every 6 months, as I get this list from EBSCO about ebooks that are going to be pulling out of the subscription collection, I'll look at the usage stats. If there's anything that's over a certain threshold, we've been trying to purchase copies where licensing is available to fill in that gap to ensure that access is not interrupted. So that's an example with EBSCO. I think you had mentioned though, Eric.
Yeah.
So if someone has published something else out there on the open web, that is perhaps a little bit more of a free-for-all that would be beyond our control, perhaps. We could certainly look at finding another source or provider and purchasing a copy of that ebook if it had been published somewhere else. Really, I don't know if that was the exact
Yeah, I
case in
think
that
they literally
situation.
photocopied it and put it in there
So,
as like a just a
and it was legal, huh?
It's kind of great.
Other questions?
So we're the nursing department, and our costs are really high for nursing techs. So what has your experience been in the open, educational resources? Are there, current nursing or medical techs available, or I did contact one of our publishers, and they said we will not save money going with e-techs. That what the students save is like the resources that are come with the textbooks, that they wouldn't have to pay for that.
Right.
So
yeah, where you're seeing the most traction in OER are on the large introductory first and second year classes, which probably, I don't know how the nursing program is structured at Park, but usually in a lot of places, their first 2 years are before they get to the nursing level. Okay. So you don't see a lot of nursing, you don't see a lot of medical, you don't see a lot of dental, and those are all big areas at UMKC as well. Where you do see the traction, Spark just put out a report. Spark is an organization that's started out of the Association of Research Libraries, and now it's its own organization. And they're a policy unit that talks about open access, open education, and open data. So one of their big initiatives is open education. And they just put out an annual report of members, and the subject field with the most traction in OER right now is mathematics, and followed by things like the sciences. Then you get down to the social sciences, the humanities, and medical is way down the list, because you have to have texts that have a lot of students and a lot of impact. So the natural low-hanging fruit in the OER movement has been the intro college algebra class, the intro chemistry text, the intro physics text, those kinds of things.
I would add, Kathy, I think this is one of those areas that, like Scott is saying, it might not be that there is a full textbook available, but I think that's where there might be avenues for maybe not OER, but like John was referencing some of the library content in terms of using particular units from like the Nursing Reference Center that we already get through EBSCO, some of those units. And then I think that speaks, at least again, to part of what I was talking about earlier in terms of what we want this to look like at Park.
Right.
This might be an area then in terms of, like we're talking about incentivizing adoption, or like Scott was talking about creation, that would be a conversation that we would want to have here. Like, how can we incentivize, really make it worth the time that's required to create these materials for maybe some of our nursing faculty to have that as an option? Because one of the things I was referencing, and people talk about with creation of OER textbooks, it really is a labor of love in terms of the amount of time that you put in into this creation. But if our faculty are investing that sort of time, it'd be nice to know that we have structures in place to reward it.
This is a field where it's a really good example of OERs, not just OER textbooks, because one of the links on our guide is to the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. They actually have an open education portal there, and they have some wonderful simulations and modules and things like that. And they would be great to incorporate into a course, but it's not a full text,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that the nursing and medical fields are a good example of a place where there are open educational units and things that you can take that can enhance education for the students at no cost to the student, that's a big thing. You can say, hey, we're going to have this textbook, it's expensive, but look at this other content I'm providing for you. These other things we're adding to the learning experience.
I think what's hard for the students too is that they don't understand it. They're going to use them all for the next 2 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
$1,500 that first semester.
Yes, it's high in ours too, but your nursing students are getting a free chemistry textbook.
There you go.
So we have a couple questions from online. So looks like there's a note about increased student grades. I think maybe this was from
this is probably from my
yours,
section.
Katelyn. Did they control for the potential for open source material also having exam/quiz case material available for students to access? One of my major concerns with open source is the availability for content for assessment.
I would have to look at the specific study. Like I said, it was spread across, it was 10 institutions that were all doing this. And I know at least for some of these textbook materials, they actually reserve materials just for faculty, instructors to have access to. So, I mean, I'm happy to provide, the study itself was actually published in an open access journal. So the article is freely available to anyone who wants to read it, to dig down into what controls they have in place. But like Donna was referencing, they do.
I'm using an OpenStax chemistry text for the intro to the nursing chemistry class right now. And I had to
special chemistry.
No, it's not special chemistry. Anyway, but OpenStax it has the set aside instructor resources, and it has a test bank. It has the first 5 chapters of the books and enhanced PowerPoint lectures. It has all of the PowerPoint slides for the images and everything, but they're behind a wall that you have to prove you're an instructor first to OpenStax before they'll give you access.
The mechanics of that is that you can go on and review the book, and they ask that at the website of OpenStax, they ask that if you're planning to use the book of the course, to register with them, and you provide your academic email address, and I guess you probably answer some questions, and there's some correspondence back and forth. And then once you've proved that you're an instructor, they unlock these resources that are not available to the students. So, and that kind of parallels what's going on in the published textbook market, where textbook manufacturers are tying more and more web-based or other tools and supplements in with the textbook itself. So that, in fact, in some cases, they tie a complete course management system in with the adoption of that textbook. They make it so that it's very attractive to a faculty member to use that textbook because it takes care of a lot of the mechanics of doing the course that they don't, nobody wants to create all that stuff themselves. Well, OpenStax and other open resources are providing these kind of supplemental materials that are similar to that.
Well, and if I can just add a little bit to that, if someone was to find a resource, open resource here at the university, they can work with the instructional design team to create, PowerPoint slides for you based on the text you find, if there's no supplemental resources. Or, even the instructional design team can help you build quizzes within the course, going alongside the textbook, the resource that you find, as long as you give them some kind of guidance of what you want. So, we have that resource here that you can reach out to, and we can help build that stuff for you.
I kind of have, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
No.
Oh, sorry, John, I didn't see you from the computer.
You're never the
So I'm going to direct this more away from you guys for a minute and over to, I'm going to put Emily on the spot for a second.
I'm sorry, I tried.
Sorry.
I know.
You're the load administrator in the room. Sorry, the dean left. Or I would have hit him up. Okay, so let's say I decide, sure, I want to create this open content textbook. If I go and write a textbook for a publisher, it goes through a peer review process. I count that as scholarship. If it's no ORE, does it count?
Right. That's actually not where I thought you were going.
Oh, okay. She's always trying to predict where I go, and she rarely is she successful.
Yeah, and you're right, for Park, we do hold that peer review as kind of the arbiter of what counts as scholarship. So I do think it's more of a question of how you negotiate that in your departmental standards for annual review and promotion and tenure. And I'm sure there are ways that you can submit that work for external peer review as part of making it available in a repository like OpenStax, right?
Yeah.
So
This is very much a conversation that's going on, not only your question, but at our institution, and I've seen it on forums about OER around the country. Promotion and tenure processes are really based on published research and peer-reviewed teaching materials and stuff like that. OER is a new technology. It's a disruptor to the existing marketplace of scholarly communication. And at some point, promotion and tenure processes are going to have to adjust to decide whether to value that or not. Explicitly, not to ignore it, but to say, yes, it's valued, or no, it's not. And I think it will be valued.
Yeah, because I can see that, at least through OpenStax, like you said, there are reviews of these textbooks. So technically it is peer reviewed. It's just not the publisher putting out.
Right.
And the Open Textbook Library is seeking better reviews. They're working toward better reviews. What you see on the site right now, some of them are really good, high quality reviews that go through everything. And some of them are more like what you'd see on Amazon.com. Two stars.
5 out of 5. Would teach again.
2 stars. It didn't download right on my, Linux machine or whatever. So, yeah.
where I thought you were going was, and then I'll let John ask his question, but was with intellectual property. And
Of course you'd think that.
we have been sort of talking about this of late at Park relative to developing online courses and those things. And I think that would be a question to explore.
See, I think if you put it out if it's on the internet,
right? Yeah.
You might as well kiss that part goodbye. But
John had it.
So my question is a little bit different from the standpoint of we have a collective bargaining agreement here, and there's an academic freedom clause, and we as faculty we have the right to select the materials, the method of instruction, and on and on and on. Having gone down this road a little ahead of us on some of this, how has faculty acceptance been with this? Or have you, and has your institution sort of foisted this upon or tried to bring people along? To me, it's an approach issue as much as anything. But
It's a bring people along thing. And while we don't have a collective bargaining thing, from the outset, even at the system level, even with the silly claims. From the beginning, we've stated that faculty academic freedom in teaching their courses will be respected entirely. So our approach is an education approach, an awareness approach. We would just, it's really great if we present this information to faculty and we can find out after this presentation, would you consider using this? Would you not consider using this? Or don't you know? You know, it's at that level. And if we can get faculty to consider reviewing a book, that's great. You know, we're definitely not in a situation where we want to get into any kind of mandates thing. And part of the reason to involve students is to prevent it from getting to that point, because once, you know, within the last couple of years, not only you might have heard there was like this student unrest at Mizzou, but within the past couple of years at Mizzou and also at UMKC, in student government, there has been, you know, talk of resolutions to demand zero textbook cost and things like that. And we don't want to go there. We don't want to compromise faculty's academic freedom to teach the courses in the way they see fit, with the materials they see fit. But we do want to make faculty aware of a resource that for most of them wasn't available when they were getting their PhDs. It's a different way of teaching. And open education is a different approach to the use of material, the remixing of materials, the sharing of materials. In the open community, and this gets into what might be metrics for promotion and tenure in the future. In the open community, it's true in open journal articles as well as in open books and open resources. I'd much rather my material get read and used than I get paid, because that reputational value is much higher than a royalty check. And I think that most people who have gotten to the top of the publishing game and have the reputation would agree that the reputational clout is much more important to them than the royalty checks that they've gotten through their publishers. Open education gives people a way to build in a new scholarly education environment. So, okay,
cool. Thank you.
I'm going to say, I saw the question from Greg Moore on here about OER business text and going into that area. If it would be helpful, I was thinking I might actually jump on and actually show OpenStax for folks who might not have seen it before, to give you an idea.
Library for those particular books you can't find it.
Yeah. So here to give, yeah, I'll go and we'll share this.
Sorry, Jane.
So share, that's a nice picture. I'm gonna share this now. Here we go.
Sienna says, yes, that would be great.
So just make sure you go to the right place. So to give you an idea here. So browse subjects, you can see all of the different areas that they offer. So I could go to accounting and finance, and you can see this one has 0 reviews, this has 7, financial accounting has 4, intermediate financial. So there's a lot of different texts that are here with varying numbers of reviews. And let's go to managerial accounting because it has more. So we can see here who's reviewed it. Over on the left-hand side, we have the about the book.
The license.
Yep, the licensing, the conditions of use, so attribution, non-commercial, share alike. It's accessible both online and via PDF. We actually go in, you can see this is a 972-page textbook that you can then go in, secure access, all of those things. So
you could pick out a chapter here, a chapter there, print some of that if you wanted to do that.
Yep, exactly. Based on this licensing, you could choose whichever chapters you want to use. And so you can see there's, again,
right.
Yep.
The license there with attribution means if you use the chapter, you give credit to the author. The non-commercial means you take that chapter, you can't put it in a book that's a for sale book. And the share alike means if you take a chapter
Mhm.
and, you know, make your own resource, you need to release it on a Creative Commons license as well, so that you're sharing back with the community.
So if I would have picked the online instead of the PDF,
Mhm.
could I do that same snipping and putting together?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep, you can do all of that. And so I was just showing Kathy here at Open Textbook Library, they do have medical tech, their medicine category. So we've got some texts like clinical procedures for safer patient care, nursing care at the end of life. So other materials of veterinary epidemiology. I don't know if you want to do that. So there's not a lot here, but they've got some. I also wanted to show OpenStax to give you an idea, again, of what they have. So we can see math, science, social sciences, humanities, and AP. So if we go into science, we can get an idea of using which ones?
Orange chemistry.
Orange chemistry. Thank you. So it gives you an idea. Again, we've got the reserved instructor resources. They've got student resources, the table of contents. So you get an idea as to what the text is. I'm imagining that Donna can attest that this looks like most other chemistry textbooks.
It does. I would say I reviewed this one and I found it to be a little low level
Mhm.
for our general chemistry.
Okay.
It's right at what I consider our introductory.
Okay.
With some modifications. I can't cover it is higher than our introductory, but as far as level, I found it right between those two.
Yeah, so again, this is one of those things that it might be for some sections that it might be ideal for Donna to cut some materials and
Yeah, that's what I've
introduce.
done. I've just kind of taken the chapters that I wanted and the parts that I wanted and built it into Canvas
It's
as
useful.
links.
Yeah, it's useful to remember that things like OpenStax and the Open Textbook Library, when you're talking about large numbers of students, high impact courses, you're also talking about courses that where you might be in competition against community colleges. And community colleges use these books as well. They are very much targeted by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. The cost of textbooks at all levels, K through 12, community college, four-year degree schools, they're all high. And these programs are designed to provide a tool to work on that.
I have a question. You mentioned what each symbol meant, like the alignment.
Sure.
And that sort of thing. Where would you find that at? Would that be
You
on
can
the
actually go to the Creative Commons website, and the Creative Commons website has a description of each of the licenses. And what you can do is there's a human readable license and a machine readable license. And so when you download, when you place the symbol on your page, like you saw there, that puts some HTML code into the page that a bot can read that says, yeah, that people can use this. So it'll start showing up on searches for open materials. The human readable license is something only a lawyer would love. And it's like pages and pages of thou shalt not do this and thou shalt not do that. And, but really the essence that's included in that icon symbol is what a user, whether it's a faculty member or a student, needs to know about using that.
And this can all just be found at creativecommons.org. So that is there.
Often it centers around attribution, the ability to remix or repurpose content, and then the whether it can be used for commercial purposes or not, or share alike.
Right.
Those are four.
And there's one more that is kind of unique, and it's the CC0 license. And if you have Creative Commons and then it's a 0, that means that you're releasing that stuff into the public domain, which means I've released it, you can do whatever you want with it. So.
I have one more question. So as Adam said in the chat over there, developing one of these would be kind of like raising a child. And let's face it, I'm not that great at that. Those that know my kid know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so, and you're not going to get paid for it. It's a lot of work. Maybe you, maybe not, you get tenure information or from it. But maybe you don't want to do the whole book yourself. Are there I don't know, like groups or something where people are saying, you know, I wouldn't mind doing an organic chemistry textbook, but I can't do the whole thing by myself. We could collaborate because I know a lot of textbooks
Caitlin, do you
are
think
co-written.
Rebus is like that, the Rebus program? Or is that different?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I do think that there are places that you can go and talk to people who are involved in OER. Like there's a Spark OER email list for sure. And there's always emails on there appearing like, hey, I'm interested in this kind of thing. I'm interested in it too. So something might develop offline. Yeah. And there a lot of these are co-authored. They're not single
And
authors.
most
chemistry textbooks are.
Sure.
And I would guess there's probably, again, there's also discipline-specific OER communities as well where you could join. And I would guess that there's already people, you know, having a conversation there as well, depending on your discipline area and what you want to do with it.
The gentleman that spoke last week from SUNY, he did talk about trying to collaborate with some of the instructors here at Park to do just that because it's a community college system and they don't have all. So he wants to reach out. And
Mark McBride.
Mark McBride, thank you.
Yeah.
He wants to try to connect some faculty here and his faculty to work on just doing just that.
And the SUNY system, of course, it's huge. It's community colleges, it's the 4-year schools and everything. And he was our keynote at the UMKC online conference last week. And yeah, they have done some things with open textbooks. They went the route where they were trying to make their own, you know, internally and to provide money for that. And that's not a sustainable model. I mean, just for the reasons that you mentioned. So, but if there are enough people in the education community across the country that if people worked a little bit here and a little bit there on things, there can be some really neat things brought together with much less personal strife.
Any comments out of you, South Florida? Okay, thanks, Glenn. Nice. Okay.
And then I also saw a question, I think from, it was Carla that was concerned about the EBSCO ebooks.
Yeah, I just kind of repeated what John had said about that. I have, and then Monica found a graphic novel sociology textbook, which sounds really cool. I do want to ask the park folks, you know, back on the topic of you know, adoption and incentives, you know, what do you think will be most important for faculty to have support-wise to begin to ask the question about alternatives to current textbooks or to thoughtfully reflect on, hey, do I know why I'm requiring, you know, the instructional materials I am? What forms of support would be meaningful? Because it really is interrogating your pedagogy alongside, you know, the issue of cost and access for students, and that's.
You talking about to actually do or just to begin thinking about it? I mean,
it will take coffee to begin thinking about it.
Right. I mean, encouraging people to actually have.
Yeah, I mean, encouraging. I mean, obviously, events like this that, you know, spark your imagination about what's possible are a very important part of getting the conversation started. But yeah, the turning to your.
I can talk a little bit about grants because I'm involved in working on that subcommittee, and we're proposing and looking at several things, and we don't have dollar amounts yet, but we have 2 or 3, maybe 4 levels total of grants. One would be like the book review, the book review incentive. So a nominal amount working through open textbook network that will get faculty another little amount and reviewing a book that's in open textbook. The next levels are course redesign levels, and one level is to convert things to OERs, okay? And that's to adopt, adapt, or create. A lot of institutions are using that particular 3-word language. Adopt an existing OER, adapt an OER, which is taking it and remixing it, or create an OER from scratch in a course redesign, and focusing on high impact courses, which, you know, one of the programs, I think it was Cal State University at San Marcos, it might have been, they were looking at high impact as being things that had over 500 students in it per term. Obviously, Park has a different level of high impact than Cal State, University of San Marcos, and UMKC. So defining that. And then OER, then there would also be affordable sources, which would be using library licensed resources, using auto access through our bookstores, using materials that might be found on the web, freely available Project Gutenberg books, things like that. And then the third level of course redesign would be a hybrid of OER and affordable resources. And depending upon who you talk to, affordability as measured nationwide is like less than $40. That's what's the stated goal.
Yeah, you mentioned that
Yeah.
with the ongoing
Right.
benchmarking.
Some places say less than $50, but I have it on pretty good authority. It's less than $40 is the benchmark for something being affordable. The course materials per student are less than $40 for the class.
And if I'm thinking about how do you first begin to have the thoughts about why do I do what I do and those kind of things, I think it's got to be sort of a slow process in a way where those who have already done it amongst us can actually begin to talk about it in a way to show that you can still live through it. You know, I didn't lose my academic freedom. I'm in no worse shape than I was. And then take some of those questions. I think that begins the thought process. If you're actually talking about the mechanics of, okay, so how do I start building? Then I think it's situational. For me, I don't really care about the money. I need the time. I want the time. But I have colleagues that would say, I would prefer to get the money. So I don't know that you can do an either or. I think you'd need something that would support either to actually do the mechanics of it.
Speaking to that, UConn, I think on their open education resources site, they have a selection of heroes, people who were adopters and who created or used OERs, and then kind of lessons learned, faculty lessons. And what I'm hoping to do on our live guide is to, over time, get faculty profiles of people who are using OERs, because I think that part of the way of making the culture change is just having faculty who've used it have their stories out there and have them willing to speak to others and say, you know, I didn't die, it wasn't bad, you know, and then this did not work, don't do this, or this was really great, you know, not to make it something that's universally, oh, this is the most wonderful thing.
And I think that's the important point. That, I mean, I was in police before I came here, and I could stand in front of a group of police officers for an hour and tell you why you really should do this and why it's good. But an officer who already done it, could stand in front of them in 5 minutes and convince them because they could tell it was fun, or it saved me work, or this was neat, I can do this. And then all of a sudden they're on board. But those are the workers who are actually doing it. And I can actually tell you how it worked versus me as a manager saying you should, and it's really great. And I think that's how we'll have to go about it here.
Right.
Too.
Well, and to speak to what you were saying, Donna, where you're like, you know, so far it hasn't been bad, which is good. You know, you don't want it to be a worse experience, but then ideally we'll get to the end of the semester and it will not only be that's Donna's reaction, but when we get, you know, student grades back and performance, and we'll see like,
I can already
because
tell you they're reading it more.
yeah, so
They don't buy the book I mean, they're too expensive. They do not buy the chemistry book. They are logging on. I can see. Because, you know, I can see how and what link in Canvas they're using.
Yeah.
And so I can see when they go in the book. I can see how long they're spending. And I can tell you right now, they are using the book.
At University of Missouri, they did their OER task force did a survey in 2016 of students. And they found that 65% of students that responded made a decision not to buy a textbook for a class. Because of the cost of the textbook, and they also found out that those students knew exactly how much that textbook cost. You know, it wasn't a situation like I didn't go to the bookstore because blah. It was like, this book is too expensive, I'm not buying it. And they also found they went beyond that and said they found that 75% of students delayed buying a book for a class until they found out they absolutely needed it. So and I think that those kind of statistics, I've seen some other statistics from other schools. I think that is probably a valid statistic across the country.
We also have the financial aid release timing problems that
Yes,
often come up. Before they get
absolutely.
2 weeks into the class, and now they're finally getting their money.
And now they can get the book.
Well,
Yeah.
And if we expand this out further, like Donna was saying, that she can see, how students are accessing, how much time they're spending in the text or when they're going in, particularly, for our accredited programs here, or when it comes to things like assessment, that's just becomes another point of data for us as well, where we can say, we're not only choosing these textbooks, but we have statistics that show our students are using it at this rate, and we've seen, this is what their level of engagement is with this material. So again, it just provides us with another avenue for collecting data as well, which is
And the ability that Donna can say to her colleagues, that it doesn't take me an extra 3 or 4 hours a week to do. It doesn't.
It's not taking me any time. I mean,
Exactly.
it hasn't yet. It will, because they only have chapter 1 through 5, the PowerPoint's done. But, and so
Okay,
after the first
looking at-
5 weeks, now I'm going to have to start making my own PowerPoints again.
Well, but
But-
as far as looking at who's using and who's on and those things, you could tell colleagues who might be thinking about this, it doesn't take any time. I can look at this very quickly.
No, and in fact,
So
it
then
it gives me a
that-
heck of a lot more feedback on how my students are performing, and when they're struggling, I can tell why they're struggling.
Exactly.
No,
And that's why you work with your instructional designers when you come up for maintenance and things like that, is that we can build that into the course. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's why we're redeveloping courses all the time. And in new development is we can do those kinds of things where we can help you walk alongside you and say, what's going to work for your course, what's not going to work. Do you like these PowerPoints? We can build those for you, those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, and I think we do need to take a team approach on this. Work with the library, work with the instructional designers as a department, as individuals within the departments, because you guys can't do it all yourselves. You know that. You're way too busy teaching, trying to get tenure. You can't do it all yourself. So, I mean, you have to lean on the library to help you find the resources. Lean on the instructional designers to help you get in the course, develop something to go along with the resources of the library that John, Katelyn, and Karen have found for you. I mean, it's going to have to be a team approach. And it might be you and a colleague working on something, or you and another department working on something together across these platforms.
Emily, as far as incentivizing people, I think most of us that are here for the right reasons, for the students, I want to reduce this cost anyway. I hate it that right now I have to charge. I mean, my students are having to pay for organic chemistry for a 2-semester class. They're paying over $400. And that drives me insane. Until there's something else out there, and there's not for organic yet, but there is for Gen Chem, so I'm saving them a little bit.
I didn't even realize. I had some of the second semester nursing students come and say to me that to access, and here we're thinking, oh wow, we're getting them this really great resource, adaptive learning that came with a book. I didn't realize it was $98
Right.
and
they hate it.
Well, it comes with their med cert, but it's prepping them for their RN board test.
Right.
And they're like, well, I don't know if I want to spend $98 for 50 points. I was like, oh my God.
Well, they are having, I did add the adaptive learning.
Yeah,
But
50 points is not worth 50 points. That's what they told me. I'm like, oh, but it's NCLEX prep, you know?
Yeah. There's some things. I mean, I am having the pre-nursing students use an adaptive learning program with it, but it's $40.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
it'd be
I
free
see,
if we went with the ebooks.
well,
It's like, woo.
I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I think time and tools and dialogue and examples are going to be the most.
I do it right.
And it's done right.
I know, right?
It's helping some production costs.
I know.
You're teaching and course design and not just, sort of a pragmatic task.
I have a question for the library. Fort Hays State, a couple of years ago, did some things at, where did we go? Sidelight. And they basically went out and purchased one of mini textbooks, you know, like say organic chemistry, they bought 10 of them, had them, cut them apart, PDF them, and they got around the 10% kind of rule by offering that if you wanted to do organic chemistry, you could use one chapter out of many books as opposed to using a whole book. Now, I've had some things, they did that and they were able to get around. They said, hey, here's the textbook. You can pull a chapter out of this one and pull a chapter out of this one, pull a chapter out of that one. And I'm wondering, is that really legal? I mean, is that?
This gets down to, there's a pretty famous to librarians court case that deals with Georgia State. And they got sued for their course packs.
Which is essentially what that is,
Which
creating
is,
a course
they're
pack.
creating a course pack.
Right. Using
multiple
materials.
snippets
Yeah.
of books. And it's certainly the kind of thing I wouldn't brag about if I was a librarian.
Well,
you know,
they were bragging about the fact that they were going to get down to zero and they were going to give their instructors resources.
The Georgia State case has gone the whole way to the Supreme Court, and the justices sided with Georgia State, but it's back in appeals.
Yeah, so the justices sided with Georgia State with caveats. On most of the merits of the case, they found for Georgia State. However, one of the most important takeaways really from that case is that there used to be, like you said, this 10% guideline that people held as pretty hard and fast.
Right.
And that is no longer true at this point. They do not put a percentage on it or a certain number of page numbers, a certain number of lines for poetry. None of that is acceptable in terms of fair use and that sort of usage anymore. It instead gets at whether or not this is the heart of the work, how important it is to the work, and does it damage the commercial value of the work, and the ability of the copyright holders to be essentially rewarded economically for their work. And so, like you said, it's been kicked back down to district court, so they're still figuring out some stuff, but Georgia State has spent a lot of time and money on this, and they've received some help from outside groups.
Received some pro bono law, legal groups.
But yeah, realistically, this is probably long-term not a direction that most academic institutions probably want to go for longevity purposes if they're looking to reduce text costs.
I think you have to be tolerant also of a high degree of probability that you're going to get litigated.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it does turn out to be a legal way to do things, I think that the possibility of
there's even been questions about, publishers, frankly, if they like inserting their own people into enrolling into online classrooms to check and see what sort of materials are there and what's listed. I mean,
it's not just the publishers on the publisher side in the Georgia case, it's also authors. The Authors Guild is on the side. And it's a really, really messy, really complicated case. It's been going on for,
I think it was 2013, so it's going on 4 or 5 years now.
It was a couple of years ago, so it's probably not long after.
Yeah, but I mean, this is something where, you could pull, that's the nice thing about Creative Commons licensing. If we were going to do a course pack, we can certainly do it with OER materials, but we're probably not going to do that with materials that are copyrighted under traditional licensing structures.
Now, before you said the cutting it up and repackaging it, I thought you were going to say something like what North Carolina State University is doing is that their libraries, which they're kind of like an amazing library, the North Carolina State University libraries, they're very well endowed, and they're buying a textbook for every course that students are taking, and they have a giant course reserves available for students to go and access books that are in courses. Hard copies, print copies, you can check it out on Course Reserve. Talk about a not sustainable way of dealing with things, but they have the money to do that at this point.
Which I see here, Valerie too made a point of saying that that there are, in addition, that we didn't spend a lot of time on, but materials in the public domain as well. So particularly for, let's say, literature courses that are dealing with older materials, historic courses that deal with the historical aspects of things. There's a lot of material available, like Scott mentioned, through like Project Gutenberg, or even I want to say Hockey, but I know that's not.
Hockey Trust.
Yeah, the Hockey Trust that they've digitized. There's a fair amount of material that they've digitized that's now out in the public domain as well that you can then use. And
Valerie also mentioned earlier on the chat that she loves helping create PowerPoints, and I smiled, but I think that often the siren's call that accompanies just purchasing an ebook from a major publisher is, well, look, you'll get these PowerPoints and you'll get these test banks, and you'll get this highly orchestrated assessment strategy, which could be very important for certain programs. But I think it's I will admit, even heading into this reducing textbook conversation at Park, my knee-jerk reaction was to think about textbook publishers, and not and I we just need to get the word out there to fellow faculty that you have choices beyond simply purchasing the lower or adopting the lower cost ebook.
If somebody wants to scroll down on OpenStax, it'll show you assessment partners that they have that are low cost.
Yes.
Like scroll down.
Really important.
Oh, where is it? Go. Maybe you have to go.
You have to go into the book, maybe.
Yeah, maybe go back into the chemistry book, for example.
Orange chemistry.
So is a green chemistry book any better?
I don't know. I didn't look at that one.
I think the green one is Adam's first
so there we
search,
go.
which is a little bit slower.
Where's it show about partners? There it is. So they have some technology partners, and if you keep going down, I'm actually using Newton, which
was right next to
right there. There it is.
Yeah.
And so it's an adaptive learning program. Yeah, it's $40 that the students get for access for a year. But it's adaptive learning, and I can build quizzes in it, and Jared has put it as an external tool into Canvas for me, so that it's automatically, the kids don't even know they're going into Newton. It just automatically, and it records back the grades directly into Canvas for me. And then I can go in and into the Newton site and see, how long they took on a certain problem or anything like that too. So
it's a really important story to get out into the department.
I'm loving it so far.
Also, beside the Newton, there was Lumen Learning. I just want to point out that the keynote from our conference, UMKC Online, Mark McBride from SUNY was talking about Lumen. So at SUNY campuses, they're using Lumen Learning. So
they recently acquired all of the Boundless stuff as well. I've also used a sapling. I use a sapling for my organic class, and that's.
So are these subject specific areas?
Yeah. So here, let's go to, let's say social.
Newton has.
And then my next question was going to be: are students paying $40 to use Newton, or you?
Yes. Okay. Now the students are paying the $40. The first time that they click on a link from my course, they'll get you have 2 weeks to pay your $40. You have 2 weeks to examine this, and then you pay your $40, and they pay it through there. Or the bookstore also can provide them with a code that they pay through the books. They buy the code from the bookstore. I will say that was significantly higher price.
We're
at the bookstore.
3:30, probably past 3:30. So I wanted to continue the conversation, offer the opportunity for folks to continue to ask questions of us individually. But for those of you who may need to step out, certainly to attend other things, you want to give that opportunity. But thank you all very much for your attendance today and your time and attention. Again, we'd be very happy to continue this conversation with you individually now or by email afterwards. And Glenn, I did see your question online, and I'll respond to that in just a minute here. Thank you.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, well, I mean, I know John's already said that slides and things will be available for things to check out. This might be something, if it's useful, I know Scott has already offered that we can steal his LibGuide and host something like that, but it might also be something where if we want to have a forum to let folks evangelize after adoption, it might be something where we can look into getting maybe a LibGuide or something going where people who have adopted materials and want to share their experience, we could try and have a forum for sharing it like that. Or
in fact, if you look at my guide and then look at what Mizzou's guide is my guide. it just, they've changed the colors from the beautiful blue and gold of kangaroos to the black and gold of tigers. And I'm totally excited about you guys perhaps using maroon and
Canary and wine.
Canary and wine. And it's an info pick, the first thing. So just change the colors. So.
Well, thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
We appreciate
Well, yeah. No, I'm hoping we get some good stats out of that. Oh, you didn't? Okay, that's all right. Here you go. Yeah.
Oh, yes. About the orientation session.
Yes.
Yeah, this is great. And
It's actually very
me and faculty senate and basically the rest of the campus before I've been we don't have two.
We only have one on there.
Yeah, it's like I have the same theory that I reached out it was funny when I went to Zoom for another thing. Grace, who's the librarian there, she was going to come here today, but Grace, she brought in Katie Steen from Spark, and it was the same message. It was having a difference.
I'll need to tell him things, but then like his teachers or other people tell him things, and suddenly it's like, oh,
How are you? A 15-year-old and a 19-year-old. Yeah, there's definitely that. Actually get part of our copy of it. So.
Thank you. Well, I see now. Here's more questions.
The title one is title, but we're still working. We're all librarians. So we're being tricky.
Yes. Well, they must be
and then I just.
It's really interesting. I've been following development center for a month or so.
Okay.
And then last year it was like, we went to see a big part of what
There
they're
was a
doing.
period.
And